Thank you so much for inviting me. I'd like to begin with some prayers. Om Ajnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Sapadantikam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Mukam Karoti Vachalam Angolam Gayate Girim Yat Kripastamaham Bande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Vanchakapatarubhyascha Kripasindhu Bhaevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Thank you all so much for inviting me to speak tonight. I thought I'd speak about the idea of paradoxes on the path or lessons from loss. Right now, we're in a time of what they're calling social distancing, but I think actually it should be called physical distancing because we're actually social beings, and that's not a piece that we can give up, that we're eternal jiva souls and we're meant to exist in relationship with Krishna. We are social beings. But it's interesting to me that in many ways right now, we're connecting more deeply socially than we were before we had this order to isolate in place. Right now, just like tonight, there's so many Zoom calls. Kirtans are being organized with devotees, some of them hundreds of devotees, sometimes even thousands. They're extended readings of Srimad Bhagavatam or Japa Sanghas. So, yeah, this idea of social isolation, to me, it's also a paradox because isolation is the antithesis or the opposite of Sankirtan, right? Sankirtan means coming together to chant together in unison and congregation. So somehow this order to isolate in place is actually inspiring so many creative ways to come more closely together with a deeper intention. So often we take for granted what's easily available. Like sometimes I might think, maybe I'll go over to the temple on Sunday. Once in a while, they have an interesting speaker over there. Or maybe I'll go shopping. Maybe I'll watch a game. Maybe I'll catch up on my email. So I'm just thinking that when we were free to gather together to chant the holy name, to sit together to hear Srimad Bhagavatam, to take prasadam or sanctified food together, or as they say, break bread together, how much were we really appreciating those blessings? So I think this is a sad paradox of our human condition. It's not really until something's been lost or there's a threat of its being lost that we truly appreciate its precious value. And this is a paradox. There's a story about a hunter in a forest. He was hunting, and he was going so many days, day after day, and he couldn't find any animals to kill. So he became very hungry. And finally, he was afraid that he would starve to death. He thought he would die of hunger. And then suddenly, in the middle of the forest, he saw an apple tree right there in the forest, full of apples. And he just became so grateful. And he thought, well, my life has been saved. So he began picking apples one after another. And then when he ate the first one, he just felt so much relief from his hunger. And then another and another and another. But then the more he ate, the more he became disgusted with apples. He couldn't eat anymore. He just began throwing them. So this is what's called the law of diminishing returns. The more we have, the less we appreciate what we have. And this is a paradox. Many today are seeing loss of life, and many people are appreciating more now how life is sacred. Many people who can't breathe even are appreciating each breath of oxygen, seeing how each breath of life is actually sacred and given by God. I heard a story from Italy that there was a 93-year-old man who was being released from the hospital. And he after recovering from the virus. And so the doctors told him that he had to pay the bill for 1 day's use of the ventilator, which was 2,000 euros. And the old man began to cry. But the doctor said, don't cry about this. It was necessary actually to save your life. Don't cry. And he said, I'm not crying about the money. I can pay the money. But I'm crying because I've been breathing air my whole life, freely given by God. And I never thought how precious it is. And then the doctors began to cry. There's a story about Srila Prabhupada when he came back to India after visiting Africa. His secretary had forgotten that they needed a card showing that they had had a yellow fever inoculation. So the customs officials in India put Srila Prabhupada and his secretary in quarantine for 14 days. Just imagine. And afterwards, Srila Prabhupada was commenting that usually he's sitting in his quarters all day doing his work. But when he's told, you can't go out, it seems intolerable. So this is a paradox. When we have more freedom, we have less appreciation for that freedom. In Srimad Bhagavatam, paradox also tends to increase the drama, the beauty, and the ecstasy of Krishna's pastimes and the pastimes of his great devotees. Just imagine the supreme absolute truth descends to the earth to exhibit human-like pastimes as a baby, as a child, and then as a romantic youth. He comes as a baby, but not a well-behaved baby like an angelic Raphael or Gabriel, but as a naughty baby. He lies, he steals, and he pees on the neighbors' floors, and he pinches their babies. This is a paradox. And then as a child, he charmed and bewildered his father using mundane logic and word jugglery to stop the sacrifice and bring down the pride of the great Indra. Holding up the sacred Govardhan hill as an umbrella, just like a little child might hold up a mushroom with the smallest finger, the pinky finger of his left hand, welcoming all the residents of Vrindavan to to take shelter under the hill along with their cows. This is a paradox. And then, as a romantic lover, the romantic paramour of Vrindavan, shouldn't he or couldn't he have married Sri Radha or her gopi friends instead of leaving them to cry for him for the rest of their lives? So some people say Krishna never came back to Vrindavan, but in one sense, he never left. So this drama of union and separation, and then again union, then again separation, this drama that Krishna orchestrates actually pulls the devotee to a deeper place of longing for Krishna. So these are all paradoxes that heighten the sublime nature of the pastimes of Lord Sri Krishna and capture our hearts. I was thinking about Queen Kunti in her very celebrated prayers. She's bewildered. She's remembering how Krishna stole butter from his mother Yasoda, how he was afraid of her chastisement, although fear personified is afraid of him. So this is a paradox. And then later in her prayer, she says, really, she's saying to us and to her beloved Lord Krishna, she says, actually she proclaims it. She says, anyone who hears, chants, or repeats your transcendental activities or takes pleasure in others doing so certainly sees your lotus feet, which alone stop the repetition of birth and death. But then after she says that, seeing Krishna, Krishna's already sitting on, ready to leave, and she's anticipating his separation. So then she says, so now are you leaving us today? Though we're completely dependent on your mercy with no one else to protect us? Now, when all the kings of the world are at enmity with us? This is a paradox. Lord Chaitanya's philosophy that we're simultaneously one and yet different from God, this is an inconceivable paradox. Sorry, we've got a little noise upstairs. There's a repairman upstairs. So this is an inconceivable paradox, isn't it? So there are many paradoxes in our world situation today. Many people are suffering. There's so much loss of life. Many people are sacrificing their lives in different ways to help other people. And it's a paradox to appreciate how our life in this world is so fragile, so temporary, and yet so very sacred. Humans are in lockdown while wildlife is roaming freely. Industry is closed, factories are shuttered, and with human intervention taken out of the equation, the Ganga and the Yamuna rivers are blue again and flowing freely. And skies are blue over the most polluted cities of the world for the first time in decades. So I'm wondering, would the earth be better off right now without human intervention? Human life, which is supposedly the most evolved, we're supposedly the most evolved life form. Humans who are supposed to be the stewards of the earth. And after the crisis, will it all go back to where it was? This is another paradox. Paradox might evoke some humility in us. We have big industry, big finance, big government, big science, and yet right now our greatest threat seems to be a tiny microscopic virus that's crossing all national borders and infecting the whole world. Our most brilliant minds don't seem to have it all figured out. And this is a paradox. We're tiny, and ideally we're meant to live simply and take only what we need. and not to be always indulging our greed to try to usurp and manipulate Krishna's divine energy, Mother Nature, Mother Bhumi, the Devi Prakriti, who is working under his direction, working always under Krishna's direction. Her bounty, the bounty of nature, are all meant to be offered in Krishna's service for his pleasure. Mirabai, the Vaishnavi saint, speaks also about paradox in her prayers. She says, "Strange are the decrees of fate. Behold, the large ears of the deer, yet he is forced to roam the forests. The harsh crane has brilliant plumage, while the sweet-voiced cuckoo is black. The rivers flow in pure streams, but the sea makes them salt. Fools sit on thrones as kings, while the wise beg their bread. Mira's lord is the courtly Giridhara, and the king persecutes the bhaktas." In conclusion, I'd like to read you some thoughts about paradox from Srila Viswanath Chakravarti Thakur from his 17th century commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto. He says, "It is at night that the sunrise becomes attractive. During the hot summer, that cold water gives comfort. And during the cold winter months, that warm water is pleasing. Lamplight appears attractive in darkness, not in the glaring light of day. And when one is distressed by hunger, food tastes especially good. In other words, to strengthen the devotee's mood of depending on him and longing for him, the Lord arranges for his devotees to go through some suffering. And when he appears to deliver them, their gratitude and transcendental pleasure are boundless." That's the end of his words. So what does this mean for us, really? There are so many paradoxes in our world, especially in the last few months. Are there some lessons for us to learn here? What have we lost? And what have we perhaps gained in understanding and realization by being physically isolated? These paradoxes of isolation and community, of life and death, of union and separation, they can all serve to pull us more deeply into the precious and finite time each of us has left in this world, to ponder, really, to ponder more deeply. We're eternal beings, yet we're temporary in the forms we now see and inhabit. We're traveling here as visitors, really as guests in this world. And that's another paradox. So these are some thoughts. Thank you so very much. Maybe you can, maybe something's important for you here, or maybe you can reflect back, or maybe you have some questions or realizations that this brought up for you. What are your thoughts about paradox, about lessons from loss? Maybe there's some lessons that you've learned in the last few weeks or months also.
Thank you very much. If anybody would like to make any comments or share their thoughts or have any questions perhaps, please, you can use the raise your hand button on your app. And this way I can I can unmute your microphones as needed. So you can do that, or you can type in your comment or question. I can read that out if you like on the chat area. So you can do one of those. I wanted to share a thought that I had that the paradoxical nature of our, even just our existential situation that we're in right now, it's so paradoxical because we're eternal, but everything that is visible to us is not. But we do have clues to our eternality, our own desire to continue to exist. And what makes a lot of our experiences paradoxical is that the things that we thought will be disasters are actually incredible opportunities that we wouldn't have been able to leverage had it not been for these disasters. And the more and more I hear from devotees, especially in this particular Sangha on this channel, so many devotees have given us so much, not only solace, but a spotlight to our situation that, this is like, in many ways, it's like a lottery that, it's a once in a lifetime or multi-lifetime situation where you actually get a chance to sit and reflect a time. When you're running around, we don't have the time to sit and reflect. Now we do, reflect and see where we are, and under pressure, what we're made of becomes more evident. And it's not necessarily bad when we see the weakness in us, if that becomes evident, because that in itself is also a good thing. Because hey, I thought I was this very great person, and this opportunity would have really shown my greatness, but it turns out I'm not so great. But it's good. At least now I know where I am, and we can move from there. So there's this all good in one sense. It's just, are we leveraging the opportunity handed to us? So at so many levels, it's coming out as a gift to the human society.
Yeah, we've been given this gift of time and space. Of course, time is also a form of Krishna. Gift of time and space. Actually, the poet Rilke said, "Let us not squander the time of our suffering," which is so interesting. So a chance to go deeper, a chance to, as you said, to see where our vulnerabilities are, and then pray to Krishna that I'm seeing this dirt come out of my heart. I'm seeing this weakness of heart, hridaya Daurbalyam, yeah. This weakness of heart, I'm seeing this come out. So please help me to take shelter of you. I mean, it's interesting. I made the point in the beginning that many people are going deeper, but there are also people who are becoming more stressed. And apparently the incidents of domestic violence are up. I heard today something that lawyers are planning that there are going to be many more divorces during this time. So it really depends on which way we lean, right? We can lean into prayer, to pondering. How can I use this time that I didn't have before? Or we can lean out and be kind of irritated with everything, with our spouse, with our kids, and also, the fears that we have right now. Many people have fears about their finances. So to really take a few moments to take a deep breath and to breathe in the blessings of the holy name, and to breathe out that fear and stress, and to ask Krishna, please, you are our maintainer and protector. Give me shelter, show me the way, show me the next steps. Because what does Srila Prabhupada say? He says, all fear comes from worrying over the future. So fear is actually a future focus. So if I can be in the moment, like just really breathing in Krishna's holy name, breathing out the stress, then we can ask Krishna to take care, as he always does. I always love the prayers of Maharaj Prithu, where he says that we're the kids, you're the father. Children don't know what to ask for, what to pray for, so give us what's best for us. You know what's best for us. Such a beautiful prayer.
Thank you. So Vijay Krishna Prabhu had a question. Vijay Krishna Prabhu, please go ahead. You can turn on your camera.
Yes, Mother Rukmini. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Mother Rukmini, this is Vijaya Krishna from Portugal.
Haribol.
Hare Krishna. I have a question related to your class about paradox.
Yes.
And while you were lecturing, giving your class, it came to my mind two very famous paradoxes in Vedic literature. The first one is that people do not want to surrender to Lord Krishna because if they surrender, the risk for them to become the very poor, the poorest of the poor can happen. So they become afraid and they do not want to surrender because they are still attached to material riches. And then you spoke about Queen Kunti, and Queen Kunti asks from Lord Krishna for calamities, because if calamities are present, then the only solution is to take refuge at the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. So do you have any comment about these two paradoxes?
Such a high level of consciousness, isn't it? That what does Bhagavad Gita say? When one's mind, faith, and refuge are all sheltered in Krishna. So her mind and her heart, her whole being is so sheltered in Krishna that she just wants Krishna, and those calamities make him appear. Just like when you strike a match, fire comes out. So those calamities make Krishna come to the rescue of his devotees. A tremendous paradox. But it just shows her beautiful heart. I mean, which one of us could really pray the way she prays? And then it's so true, we're afraid to surrender to Krishna because maybe he'll take everything away, because he says those people who are dear to him, he takes everything away. Of course, there's so many stories on both sides. There's Sudama Brahman. He gave Sudama Brahman a tremendous opulence. Of course, Sudama was a little bit attached to renunciation. So Krishna had to show him that I'm the most precious thing, not the renunciation. But in any way, Krishna sees our hearts. He sees what we give. He sees what we give. He sees what we hold back, right? And the thing is, to be afraid of becoming poor, it's another future focus, right? When Krishna takes something away, he gives himself. Sometimes devotees ask, if Krishna gives his protection, then why are we seeing devotees die? Or why did this very dear devotee die? So when Krishna gives his protection, he's protecting the consciousness of the devotee. Because in fact, anyone who's taken birth, the temporary body must die, right? One who has taken birth, death is certain. But what is certain also is that when we take shelter of Krishna, when we practice in our life, then he gives us that ability to remember him in difficulties, to take shelter of him in difficulties. And it's so difficult to know what a person is going through at the moment of death. But we know that Krishna's shelter is there for someone who's taken his shelter. Maharaj Kulashekar prays, let me die now, because at the time of death, my voice will be choked. I'll be in a difficult type of consciousness. But Krishna is there for the devotees. There's a story of Ramanujacharya that he was asking his deity of Krishna, what happens if your devotee can't remember you at the time of death? And the deity responded by saying, then I will remember my devotee. So poverty, as you asked about poverty, I believe that no matter what condition Krishna puts us in, he knows what's best for us. And if he puts us in poverty, then he gives us the opulence of his own self. so many beautiful stories. The story of the fruit seller who came to the house of Nanda Maharaj. She had a basket of fruits, and little baby Krishna was running toward her with grains in his hand, the way he'd seen the adults do. And all the grains were falling between his fingers as he ran up to her. And she was so charmed by him that she just filled up his hands with as many fruits as he could hold, even though he hadn't really given her much of anything. And then, of course, when she turned back to her basket, it was full of jewels. So the real jewels are Krishna himself, right? That's the real, most precious jewel, the Nilamani, right? So these are a few thoughts. I hope that is helpful to your question.
Very, very helpful. Thank you very much, Mataji.
Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you. We have a question from Guru Das. I'll just read it out on the chat. It is the glorious job of Maya to make our temporary sojourn here seem permanent. We are obliged to our spiritual masters to preach in this time of pandemic. How best to give Krishna to others during this time by purifying ourselves and at the same time praying to give his teachings to others?
That's a beautiful question. Thank you so much. You know, Srila Prabhupada used to use the phrase, tax your brains to see how you can serve Krishna. Once he said, what is the use of your being Americans if you can't do something wonderful for Krishna? So right now we see people from other countries, India, doing wonderful, wonderful things for Krishna. It's amazing. During this time of lockdown, so many devotees in India are distributing so many plates of prasadam, sanctified food, hopefully keeping their 6-foot distance, but really being very selfless. So I think if we pray to Krishna, he will give us an understanding of how, with my God-given gifts, how I can offer those gifts back to God. And they might be very individual. I know my son Gauravani, he started a sangha with the teenagers of Baltimore and DC. They're reading Shyam Sundar Prabhu's book, Chasing Rhinos, which is such a great read for teenagers. And he called up Shyam Sundar Prabhu, and Shyam Sundar Prabhu sent him a beautiful letter full of appreciation of the wonderfulness and uniqueness of Srila Prabhupada, how he was such a great adventurer. And so, such a creative idea, right? So many ideas will come if we pray to Krishna. Kirtans, I know in Russia, they're doing an extended Srimad Bhagavatam reading. And Janavi Harrison is doing a kirtan for an hour every day from her house in London. So pray to Krishna. He's waiting for us, actually. He sits in our hearts. Sometimes if we don't call on him, then maybe he feels unemployed. So call on him, and he's waiting in our hearts to reciprocate with our desires and our prayers.
Thank you. We have a question from Helen. Which Helen is this? Hold on, let me unmute this. Go ahead.
Hey, Haribol, Rukmini.
Oh, Haribol, Helen. You have to really name your label here a little better.
Sorry. Last night we were hearing from Bhakti Charu Maharaj, and someone asked him to tell about his experiences with Srila Prabhupada. And so it's wonderful that you're here tonight, and you had so much personal association with Prabhupada at such a young age. Would it be all right if you shared some of those experiences with us?
I will tell you a funny story that I just shared the other day. How did this come up? I'm trying to remember how this came up. Oh, there was a discussion on one chat about why sometimes we see in the great pictures of the great devotees, they have rather long hair. And why did Prabhupada ask the men in ISKCON to shave their heads? So So Prabhupada had just been somewhere. I'd have to ask Malati. He was somewhere where Malati was, and the deities in that temple had, the Gaurnitai deities had long hair down to their waists. And Srila Prabhupada chastised the pujari and said, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was not a hippie. And so then, almost immediately after that, he came to San Francisco. There was a Rath Yatra in San Francisco. And after the Rath Yatra, there was a conversation in Prabhupada's room in Berkeley. And one of the BBT artists pulled a copy of Teachings of Lord Chaitanya off the bookshelf and said, Srila Prabhupada, we see in the paintings of Lord Chaitanya that he has rather long hair. And so then right after having said in this other temple that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was not a hippie, in Berkeley, where I was sitting in the room, Prabhupada said, yes, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was hippie.
That's great.
It was so funny because, he was really taking the mentality from which the question was asked, which is something he would very often do. He would not so much answer the question, but address the mentality with which the question was being asked. So obviously, to all of us, to him, this person was really wishing that he could also have long hair. Why can't we have long hair if Lord Chaitanya and the Panchatattva have long hair? And so Prabhupada said, yes, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was hippie. And then he said, therefore he has come to save you. But because of his Bengali accent, where all the S's are a little bit more or less SH, so we weren't sure if he was saying save you or shave you. So then Prabhupada picked up on that and he kept repeating, save you and shave you, save you and shave you. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he has come to save you and shave you. That's a really sweet story from Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a question. Thank you. If we have a question or comment from Yashoda Dalal. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Rukmini Mata.
All my friends, miss you.
We miss you.
Miss you so much.
Nice to see you, though we've been talking on the phone. A comment and a question. Something you said resonated with me. Yes, even in this time, there's paradox. Lots of people are suffering. I know of devotees who have lost their job, for example, or are struggling financially, and that's obviously a very sad situation. And devotees should do what they can to help, even if it's just prayers, for example. But the paradox is that, like you said, there's so many sanghas going on. Like on this Tobacco Sangha, for example, every night we have fantastic speakers. 3 times a week, His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami, who's on here tonight, by the way. His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami leads a discussion on Bhagavatam where people can ask him any questions related to what he's reading from first canto. And there's been so much nourishment going on. And I felt, like you said, we go to the temple and we receive so much sangha or so much hearing, and sometimes we may not take it, very as what it is, and we may take it cheaply. Whereas now we're really relishing it and taking it deeply. So that's the paradox. So that's the comment. The question I had was actually, I was going to ask what Mother Vegavati asked, which is to narrate a Prabhupada pastime. So I might make it a twofer, if you don't mind, a twofold question. One question is to talk about any situation where you saw in Srila Prabhupada's life, with because you had so much personal experience with Srila Prabhupada, where you saw him dealing with a paradox and what the situation was.
Yeah, thank you. Question. I was in Vrindavan before the Vrindavan temple opened when Srila Prabhupada came, and he expected the temple to be open in late 1974. he had been, it always makes me think it was almost like the emperor's new clothes, that story of the emperor's new clothes, because the temple managers there were so afraid of Prabhupada's anger and kind of knew he would be angry. I mean, anger like Hanuman, we have to understand in context, not mundane anger. But they were sort of misleading him and leading him to believe that the temple would be ready to open. And Srila Prabhupada had invited devotees from all over the world to come to the temple opening, which was supposed to be Janmashtami 1974. And he even had invited the chief minister of Uttar Pradesh, who was coming with his whole entourage. It was a great embarrassment for Srila Prabhupada when the temple did not open. And Srila Prabhupada became very, very ill, and we were all praying for him. All over the world, devotees were praying for him, and he instructed us that the way to pray is, my dear Lord Krishna, if you desire, please cure Srila Prabhupada. So always with that clause, if you so desire, which is a very beautiful thing. So he was lying in bed. He couldn't lift his head from his bed at that time. But then this chief minister was coming. So just like a mystic yogi, Srila Prabhupada got up from his bed and went into the unfinished temple room, which is really just a construction site, and sat in a chair next to this gentleman. The whole entourage was there, as Prabhupada always talks about, when the king comes, the whole entourage comes. Prabhupada sat next to him, spoke with him, welcomed him, entertained him, and was there with him for, maybe half an hour or something. And then the gentleman left, and then Prabhupada went back to his room and just collapsed in his bed. So, paradox, paradox in the lives of the devotees. And I thought of this other story when you were asking. I recently read this story of serving Srila Prabhupada. He had made some friends there in the temple, so he thought that he would go to Mangalarti, and because Prabhupada didn't usually ring his bell and call for him so early in the morning, so he thought he'd go see his friends, go to Mangalarti. So he went to Mangalarti, and as soon as he got there, Prabhupada's secretary was calling for him. Prabhupada was asking, where is Shrutakirti? Prabhupada, of course, beyond mundane limitations of knowledge, right? So Prabhupada was calling for Shrutakirti, and Shrutakirti came back and said, oh, I'm sorry, Srila Prabhupada, I just went to Mangalarti. And Prabhupada said, your job, your service is to be here with me in case I need you at all times. And so it's an interesting paradox I was thinking of, that here he thought he would go to Mangalarti and dance and see his friends because he was in the service of Srila Prabhupada, but someone else who maybe went to Mangalarti every day or maybe sleeps through Mangalarti every day was thinking, oh, Mangalarti, it's so early. I don't know, I'd rather be at home sleeping. So it's so interesting, this idea of paradox, all these different paradoxes that really increase the feelings of a devotee. Yeah.
Thank you. We have Shamkun Prabhu had a comment. Shamkun Prabhu, go ahead. See if I unmute. The unmute doesn't seem to be working.
Okay, no problem. Fine. Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you so much for a nice class. This is Shamkun Das from Chuaku Temple. So, my question to you, Mataji, is Krishna is the source of all these paradoxes? The reason I'm asking this question is, we know Krishna as a Bhagwan, as full of 6 opulences. For example, he's the most famous person in the whole creation. But still, it's so difficult for us to preach. It's much easier to preach the Buddhism compared to the Krishna consciousness, right? Because even the Buddhism is atheistic. So looks like there's a paradox right there. And Krishna is the most wealthiest, Kandar Pokho Dikamaniya, so he's like the most wealthiest person. But still, you look at the devotees or the temples, they're struggling. And even if you have to do something for Krishna, whether it's a project or something, it looks like it's much easier to do some demigod related project, which is much easier to get money or something. So looks like Krishna is the source of all paradox. So do you have any comments on this?
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned Krishna's 6 opulences. So what is the ultimate of the 6 is his renunciation. So he has all strength, all knowledge, all everything, all beauty. But yet the ultimate paradoxical last of the 6 opulences that he has all renunciation. He can just walk away from any of them. He's not interested. He's not attached to any of them. So maybe he wants us to really tax our brains, to try a little harder, to really pray to him, to really use our creativity. You mentioned Buddhism being atheistic, and it's so interesting because in one of Prabhupada's writings, he says there is actually no void anywhere in the creation of the Lord. Such a unique kind of a great Mahavakya of Srila Prabhupada. There's no void anywhere in the creation of the Lord. But one teacher says that we all have a God-sized hole in our hearts, which is very, very interesting. So, mindfulness is a very powerful thing. It's helping people in many ways, but ultimately we have to go to the place of heartfulness. And maybe that's a lesson for us also. Maybe we're trying to serve using our minds, but maybe we have to go deeper to the place of the heart. I heard a story from a Buddhist teacher, actually. One of her colleagues was coaching a man who was dying of he had a very painful stomach cancer. And so this Buddhist teacher was his mentor, and he was instructing him, just go to the place of mindfulness, try to go to the place of mindfulness. And finally, at a certain point, this man who was in excruciating pain, he said, the mindfulness is just not working. And then the teacher very wisely said, then you have to go to the place of the heart. So it's so true that many people are using mindfulness in different ways, and it has benefited them in many ways. Cortisone levels come down, scientists have said, and all these things. But ultimately, we have to go to that place and open our hearts to Krishna to really find our shelter and to really fill up that hole. And why does Krishna make it so difficult? Well, sometimes Srila Prabhupada would say, because your purpose is not strong. So maybe we need to make our prayers for service. My dear Lord Krishna, please give me some understanding how to come to you. Please give me some idea how to give the gifts of Krishna consciousness in out-of-the-box and creative ways. Srila Prabhupada was so out of the box. I think a lot of us try to stereotype Srila Prabhupada as though he was some kind of a very conservative in-the-box thinker, but he was not at all. So he was always ready for some new and creative idea for spreading Krishna consciousness. So maybe we need to go deeper to the place of heartfulness to get that inspiration from Krishna. Sometimes I might be thinking, Krishna, you're just not helping me here. I'm trying to chant and you are just not helping me. But if we can take a deep breath and ask Krishna that, like the prayer of Narottam Das Thakur, he says, he's praying to his guru, he's saying, without you, I cannot find the strength to carry on the Sankirtan of the holy name, please. So I think this is a very good prayer. Without you, I don't have the strength. Without you, I don't have the creativity. I don't have the intelligence. Please show me the way. Give me some idea of how I can spread the glories of Krishna, the glories of Srila Prabhupada, Lord Chaitanya's great mission. I hope this is a little bit helpful.
Thank you. Thank you, Mataji.
Yes, thank you. We have Venkata Bhatt Prabhu also on the line. Go ahead, Venkata Bhatt Prabhu.
Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna, Mata. It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you, my dear friend.
Thank you so much for this. So if it's okay, I just, I have a thought and then a question, or I'd like to ask you to just expand on something. So the thought is, I'm really appreciating, coming from the many examples of paradox that you've given, that in one sense, each of these paradoxes present an opportunity for us to grow closer to Krishna. And they can look very different. In some cases, it may involve leaning towards something, and in other cases, it may be leaning away from something. So even in your response to one of the questions that was raised in terms of Krishna's devotees becoming impoverished, we have that counter example of Sudama Brahman, like you said. So there's always the counter examples that I think maybe keep us in this kind of dynamic tension or balance. So the question part of it is, how do we, especially in times like the one we find ourselves in now, how do we develop the kind of self-awareness or discernment, especially when we're kind of feeling so isolated, to know what we're supposed to be leaning towards and what we're supposed to be leaning away, if it's so individualized and so personal, and what may work for the devotee in the box next to me, if we're in gallery view. I don't know if everyone's in gallery view, but what may work for the devotee in the box on this side of me and on that side of me may be very different than what works for me in my relationship with Krishna.
Thank you. I love this question because it is so individualized. And yeah, one man or woman's food is another man or woman's poison. Haribol Krishnangi. Yeah, so that idea of discernment, I think, is a, it's a gift. It's a word that we hear. The Christians use this word a lot, and I think it's a really beautiful concept and a really beautiful gift. And to me, it just seems to come from going into a place of deep prayer, because so often we do want to just, okay, this is working for him, maybe it'll work for me, but maybe that's the worst thing in my situation, and maybe my gifts or my abilities are very different from that person's gifts or abilities. So that discernment, what can I say? I mean, I don't think that you either got it or you don't. I think it's a gift from Krishna. And if Krishna sitting in our hearts knows that we're crying for that and begging for that, then I think he will reciprocate. And, all these uncharted territories, I keep thinking, as I'm answering this question, I keep thinking of Shyam Sundar and his time with Srila Prabhupada. And Shyam Sundar is so much like an Indiana Jones type of a character. And he was always up for the next creative adventure with Srila Prabhupada. And he learned that from Srila Prabhupada. Whatever hasn't been done, let's try that. Wherever we haven't gone, let's do that. Let's go to some uncharted territory and do something wonderful for Krishna. I think you yourself are doing that at Princeton. So, interacting with so many people who maybe are not, don't think of themselves as ISKCON devotees or even Vaishnavas, or, youth who are very, very brilliant from the Indian community. And these are all uncharted territories, and it tests our creativity. Sometimes we want to just hold back and stay in that groove of what I've done before, or what someone else has done before. But I think the greatest rewards will come when we venture out into those places of uncharted territory for Krishna. And it's not the same for everyone. Not everyone could do it, or not everyone should do it, right? But I think it's very exciting. And I, as I said before, I don't appreciate when devotees try to kind of remold Prabhupada into this very stereotyped personality and try to create that kind of stereotype within his mission, because I think that's not at all what he was about. He would pick and choose what would be good for our bhakti. Sometimes it was something Vedic, sometimes it was something very, very progressive or innovative. So whatever would enhance our bhakti, yena tena prakarena mana Krishna niveshayat. Somehow or other, fix your mind on Krishna. Like I think of you as a person, you know, you would not be happy doing some kind of in the box profession or in the box type of work or service. So Krishna so kindly reciprocated with you and given you this whole new terrain to venture out into uncharted territory, to try to capture the hearts and minds of some brilliant, brilliant people, to charm them with Govardhanika village or the beauty of Lord Krishna. So I was just thinking when we had that conversation between Radhanath Swami and Father Frank Clooney at Columbia University, and Shruti came up to talk to you while you were speaking with Father Clooney, and you said to him, "This is my daughter Shruti." And she said, "I am not Shruti, I am Lord Ram." And this Catholic priest, the head of the Center for the Study of World Religions at Harvard University, said, "Oh, Shruti, Lord Ram, very nice to meet you." And, you know, so I think this is going on into you're sending the DNA down into the next generation as well. So thank you very much. Haribo, I hope that helps a little bit.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mother Rukmini. Neelmani Prabhu, you have a comment?
Sure. Well, actually, you know, maybe an observation I'd like to share just with all of the members of the Sangha. You know, we've been going for over a month, and one thing I've noticed is that all of our speakers in this whole time, they're just all so kind of calm and understand the situation. And you know, some of our speakers have even told us, "Why are you so surprised? You know, this is material nature," and so forth, right? But one observation I guess I wanted to make was that I just noticed that all of the senior Vaishnavas, especially those that have had direct association of Srila Prabhupada, they are just at a different level. And clearly, you know, it's something that they directly receive from Prabhupada that's enabling them to, you know, take this whole situation very much in their stride, and in fact, you know, take full advantage of it and preach in so many ways, or you know, dig deeper inside themselves and write or whatever, right? So I guess my question, Mataji, is can you kind of give us a glimpse of what that was, that essence that Prabhupada was so able to give to his direct disciples that enables them to be so robust and so fearless and have faith continually and no anxiety, you know?
I really have to say that I see that depth in many people of the second and third generation, many of them going much deeper than Prabhupada's own disciples. And I think it's a matter of how deeply someone takes it into their hearts, and that's available through Vani and through sound. I mean, you know, I really believe that. I feel that depth is there available for all of us. And many of Srila Prabhupada's disciples who had the most personal association with him are people that walked away from it. I know at the time of Prabhupada's disappearance, there was one sannyasi, had lots of intimate association with Srila Prabhupada. And he said, "Well, if Prabhupada's leaving ISKCON, then I'm leaving ISKCON too." So it depends on how deeply we embrace it and take it deeply into our hearts. It depends on that gift of our own discernment and how we've been able to access that. Yeah, I really have to say that my experience is, it's just a complete mix. there are many, many people, again, you know, children sometimes, people in the second generation from all different countries, sometimes seeing that depth in people who never ever saw Srila Prabhupada. So that gift, Venkata Prabhu mentioned the idea of discernment. So that discernment is such a gift from Krishna, and we all have the opportunity to access it if we choose, to lean into that and to long for that and to beg and to cry for that. And if we take it cheaply, like, you know, many people who've had a lot of association with Prabhupada took it cheaply, actually, took it for granted. And so.
Thank you so much. Thank you. You have any more questions, Madan Gopal Prabhu?
I think we're good. So, well, I want to thank you, Mother Rukmini, on behalf of all the devotees here at our Sangha, and for really bringing the next level of going internal, going deeper into our own hearts, and coming out stronger in these times of difficulty, crisis, and then seeing that, you know, the world is full of paradoxes, and yet we can leverage all of them to move further. Nothing can slow us down in Krishna consciousness if we have the right perspective and the right approach. So thank you very much for you know, giving us that incredible perspective. It's very valuable for us. So I'm going to, before we dissolve the meeting, I just want to make a quick announcement. We have this program on this channel 7 days a week, and we had a very power-packed weekend. And thank you for capping it off with Rukmini Mataji. And coming up on Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 8 p.m., His Holiness Jayadeva Swami speaks from the first canto. Then on Tuesday and Thursday, on Tuesday we have His Holiness Bhakti Purushottam Swami on Jagannath Leela. And on Thursday, Hari Parashada Prabhu speaking on Damodar Leela. And then next weekend, another power weekend with His Holiness Giriraj Swami, Vishakha Devi Dasi. We'll talk on her memoirs and her memories of Srila Prabhupada and some photographs. And on Sunday, we have His Holiness Radhanath Swami. So please do join us on this channel. Look out for the announcements on Facebook and so forth, or just save this channel. And on weekends, we have earlier times. On weeknights, it is at 8 p.m. Hare Krishna. Okay.
Rukmini Mataji, again, my sincere gratitude. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on our Sangha. And, you know, with your permission, we'll request you to come again in a few weeks again, because I'm sure this is going to go on for some time. And we just are, everyone on the Sangha is so eager and thirsty for especially Prabhupada Katha and association of senior devotees and Krishna Katha in general. So thank you so much for coming, and please bless the members of this Sangha so that they can hear more and more and more and become closer and closer to Krishna. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna.
Krishna Krishna.
Thank you so much.
Hare Hare,
Rukmini,
Hare
stay
Rama,
very, very Hare Krishna for beautiful class.
So nice to see all these happy faces.